everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Adam. This is my YouTube channel, Adam Sews, and today I'm coming to you to talk to you about a gift to November. And I'm going to do this in a little bit of a different way to what I normally do on a gift to November video, and I am going to do a little talk through about something that I like to make around the Christmas period. It's a really good scrap buster. It uses very little material, it uses all of your scraps, and it's quite therapeutic and quite easy to do. So I am going to move the camera slightly forward so you're closer to the machine, and I'm going to go through what I like to make as gifts. So as we all do throughout the year, we collect up tons of scrap. I'm going to be very open and honest and let you in on a little secret, and we all collect plenty of scraps, and this hidden basket down here, the one that's as tall as the cover for my sewing machine, is full of scraps, and it's full of binding strips, it's full of little tiny squares, it's full of little offcuts that I can't bear to part with. And the other thing that I also can't bear to part with is batting scraps, because there's always something you can do with little scraps of batting. So I am going to come to you today and show you how I make my little scrappy log cabin freestyle mug coasters, basically. So you can make these any size you like. I like to start off with a square of batting that's around 7 or 8 inches or something like that. I like to have them a little bit bigger than what I'm going to use because they shrink, and then I've got 6-inch squares of backing fabric, which is left over from a project that I've just finished quilting. So when I finish quilting on my machine, I end up with these big long strips of batting that are the excess overflow around the edge of the quilt, because you have to have it bigger than the quilt top so that it's got room to shrink, and so on and so forth. So what I like to do is to start off with a square of some variety. I've got my little iron here as well that's already switched on so I can press as I go. So it's kind of a quilt as you go in a sense, and what I like to do is basically start off with a random square that's almost square, just something to work around from the centre of the block. So what I'm going to do is place my square face up on the centre of my block, and then what I'm then going to do is take some longer strips and I'm just going to literally rummage through and grab a strip of fabric. Where are we? Here we go. So I've got this hot pink strip here. So what I'm going to do is lay that hot pink strip on top of the square that's in the centre so that I can match up 2 edges, and then I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch seam down one side, straight through the fabric and the batting, just using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When I get to the end, I'm going to cut my threads, and then I'm going to chop my excess off here. This one I think I'm actually going to go around again with the pink. So what we've got here now is a square with a square, basically. So I'm going to flip that square back and press it, and then I'm going to move on to the next piece. So we've got a square within a square, so then I'm going to lay my piece onto the right hand side and stitch down that seam. And what I'm going to do basically throughout the process is just continuously keep going round and adding to the right hand side of the fabric where I've previously stitched, trimming off the excess. That bit is way too small to keep as a scrap. Even I can justify throwing that away. And then I'm going to roll it back with my finger, like so. Give it a press with my iron. If you're using a polyester batting, I wouldn't advise pressing it. I would just roll it back with your finger and finger press it, because you might melt your polyester batting, but I'm using 100% cotton here. So then I'm going to take another strip, which I've got some off-cut strips here of a lovely blue K facet. So I'm going to add a strip to the next side, which would be the right hand side. So you work around clockwise basically. So a 1/4 inch seam, cut my threads, trim off the excess like so, flip it back. I'm just going to finger press this one like this, and then I'm going to put a piece on here. So this one I think I might just do mainly in pink and blue. So I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam along the next bit. Make sure you stitch all the way to the bottom, not like I've done. Press that back, finger press it. So what we basically do is we start building up a square. So I am going to add one more blue piece to the edge there. And trim my threads. So when you get to the last round of it, if you go over the edge of your batting, it's no problem because we'll trim it all down afterwards anyway. So that's that. So I'm going to go down the other side, just so that my whole entire batting is covered. These are great fun, and they're also a great fun thing to do with young kids as well, because it's all straight lines. The batting holds the fabric in place because it's slightly grippy, and it's one of those projects that you're using scrap fabric. It's not precious. It doesn't matter if anything goes wrong. I'm going to try and find a pinkish piece of fabric for the last bit. Right, so that's a bit too wide, so I'm just going to roll that up so that I can chop it down. So that's my next strip that I'm going to add to the next section. Roll that seam back, and then what I'm going to do now is, I might as well add one to the last side, cover the whole batting, why not? Right, so let's get rid of the rest of my scraps. I'm going to push that open, roll that seam back, and then I'm going to give it a press now because I'm covered, all of the batting is covered by fabric. And it allows me to get a nice flat press on there. And then what I'm going to do is so this is now basically my quilt as you go batting blocks, so you can see on the back there where my stitching was. So this is what I'm left with. So what I'm now going to do is visually pick the section of that little quilt as you go block that I want. So I want the main bulk of this part here to be in my mug, in my coaster. So I've already cut my backing fabric to 6 inches, and what I'm going to do with this is use a 1/2 inch seam allowance rather than a 1/4 inch seam allowance, because what I want is a finished block of around 5 inches. So if I do 1/2 inch the whole way around on a 6 inch block, I'm going to lose an inch the whole way around, which gives me a 5 inch coaster. So what I'm going to do is position this face down on top of this block that I've just made, and I'm just going to jiggle it around until it covers the area that I want to see when I turn it through. And what I'm going to do is, leaving about a 2.5 inch opening, I'm going to back stitch at the start, go round and leave an opening in the center of one of those sides. This then allows me to turn it through and tuck the raw edges in once I get round there. So I'm going to stitch using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, it says, all the way around. If you struggle with your seam allowance, you can always draw it on with a pencil or a heat erase or air erase pen. So I have left myself an opening at the top here, and what I'm now going to do is use my backing fabric as a template to trim off all of the excess around here. So I'm going to trim off the corners at a slight angle to reduce some bulk, and then I'm going to go around and trim the rest of it down just to get rid of all of that excess bulk in the seams across the corner. They're such a quick make, these, and if you use the same coloured scraps for, say, between 6 or 8 of them, you can stack them all up. They all go together and look like part of a little coaster family, and then you can tie a nice piece of ribbon around them and pop a little bow on there and a little gift tag. So this is actual scrap now. It's not scrap that I'm going to hold on to. So that leaves me with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I've just trimmed off the corners and just clipped off some of the bulk off there. And then what I'm going to do is just reach inside and I'm going to pull it through that opening that I've left, which probably isn't big enough because I never do leave a big enough opening, but you might be all right. You can use fusible fleece for this, or you can use heat resistant wadding as well. I've got a lot of these downstairs on my coffee table that I've got heat resistant wadding in, but the heat that comes from a mug isn't going to be enough that you're going to need to use anything like Insul Bright or anything like that. So what you want to do is just gradually work it through. I probably should have left a little bit more of a gap with this one. And then I'm just going to put my finger in and poke it all out as best as I can. And then what I'm going to do is take my scissors with them closed, because these have got quite a round end on them, and I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to gently ease out the corners. Gently ease the corners out. So in effect what you actually end up with is what looks like a tiny little pillowcase or a little cushion cover. So what I'm going to do now is just roll those seams with my hands and squeeze them down just to compress some of that bulk. I'm going to tuck my seam allowance in on the opening, and any loose threads I'm going to tuck in like so. And then I'm just going to give it a really good press. Try not to iron your sewing table, keep it on the ironing board, Adam. So I'm just going to give it a really good press just to get those seams as nice and flat as I can. Make sure that my seam allowances are all nice and neat, which they're not too bad. And then what we're then going to do is just go and stitch a 1/8 inch stitch the whole way around the edge, just to close up that opening and to compress down the seams. So I'm going to start in the corner. Oh, I'm getting attacked by a cutting press. So I'm going to stitch at 1/8 of an inch the whole way round. This will close up that opening, and it will also give some longevity to the coasters. This now allows them to be machine washed if they have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea still on them. And when I get back to the beginning, I'm just going to back stitch a couple of threads. So that gives you a lovely little mug coaster. But what I'm actually going to do now is, because I don't want this backing to bag away from the inside, I'm actually going to just go in and stitch in the ditch in that square and across some of these lines here, just to quilt on the inside basically. So I'm going to work my way around from the very centre. I'm going to drop my needle, do 2 little back stitches, because with this machine luckily my back stitches will remain on the back. I'm going to stitch in the ditch until I get to the centre, pivot and go round. This part here is completely optional. I just think it adds a little bit more texture and depth to them. So I've gone around that centre square there, which has given me a nice little bit of quilting there, and then I'm just going to go across 2 of the other lines just to anchor down as much of the fabric as possible. This just gives them a little bit more structure and makes them a little bit more sturdy as well. And it's quite fun to stitch in the ditch in such small areas that you've just sewn. And the good thing with this as well is you can use whatever size scraps you've got basically. So that is all stitched in the ditch. I'm going to give it one final press, like so. Switch my iron off. And then you end up with a lovely little coaster, which is just the perfect size to pop a mug on. And as I say, if you make 6 or 8 of these per gift, you can stack them up, tie them with a lovely little ribbon, put a little handmade tag on them, and a little message for whoever you're gifting them to. And they fit perfectly on your side. Like there would be nice with a nice cup of tea, but I don't have anyone here to make me one at the moment. So I hope that is something that gives you an idea of what you could be making for a gift in November. Use up all of your scraps. No one's going to know their scraps apart from you, and give people lovely little handmade gifts that are really, really usable. So I hope that has given you something to go by for a gift to November this year. Massive thanks to Alison, who is so like a Dottie, that is running this challenge. And for any more information about the challenge, I will link Alison's kickoff video that has all the details you could want to know about the challenge and what prizes are on offer to win. Thanks for tuning into my channel. I will see you all very soon with the Friday Sews. Take care and ciao for now.